All right, it is 10:05. It is that magic time, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So today's Parsec webinar is titled Bridging the Gap and PBIS through Student and Staff Eyes. It is a very, very cool case study of how the administrators at Rocklin Academy Gateway were able to use Reel in a very meaningful way. And if you're not familiar with Reel, Reel is our interviewing tool that gets really authentic student feedback in mass ways and uses AI to kind of generate the top level themes and trends. So my name is Michele Darchuck. I am technically your host, but really we're co-hosting with these lovely ladies on the call. So Jillayne, Gina, sorry, and Karen will be able to introduce themselves in just a second. But my role with Parsec is I'm a learning integration specialist. My background is in K-12 education. I taught pre-K through third grade in special education, and then I also was a teacher coach. So did lots of hiring and support of teachers, did lots of support of students, created behavior plans, did all of the fun tier 1 through 3 strategies for our kiddos, but was really excited to get to showcase the great work that Rocklin Academy did today. So excited to get us started. All right, so Jillayne, I'll have you start us off, and then we'll let the rest of your team go ahead and introduce themselves as well.
Sure, thanks, Michelle. Hi, I'm Jillayne Antoon. I'm the principal at Rocklin Academy Gateway. Our school, we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get into the meat of the presentation, but we are a TK through 8th grade campus with about 1,200 students in Rocklin, California, which is just a little bit outside of Sacramento. So we're excited to be here today and have really enjoyed working with Michelle as part of our piloting of the Reel platform here at our school.
Hi, my name is Karen Georgeson, and I have been fortunate to be working at Rocklin Academy Gateway for 8 years and work with all of our TK to 8 students. I'm also a part of our PBIS data team and our impact committees, so I'm excited to be here to talk about PBIS.
Hi, my name is Gina Moon. I am a middle school teacher, and I teach art and leadership, and I do a lot of work with the student voice on our campus.
Awesome. So excited to be co-presenting with you ladies. All right, so here's kind of our action and agenda items for today. We do know that there are typically, especially when you're rolling out a new PBIS system, some disconnects between how staff and students experience PBIS. So we really want to make sure that that is mitigated by understanding the experiences of both of those education partners within your community, how to use open-ended feedback to dig deeper into what's really happening and what the real perspectives are, rethinking how PBIS is communicated and applied across your school, because we know PBIS only really works well when it's implemented with fidelity and with continuity. So making sure that that is happening, how to turn those qualitative data insights into action steps that are meaningful. No worries, Tim. We're glad to have you here. And then also strengthening buy-in by bringing in student and staff voices into the same conversation. So PBIS, or Positive Behavior Incentive Systems, if you're not sure what that stands for, is a way that we are really making sure that students are feeling supported, and also that they're feeling as though they're being reinforced for the positive behaviors that are happening on campus. So traditionally, I know when I went to school, I started off in Catholic school. So one of the best ways to redirect me as a kid was to tell me, no, stop, right? But we know that that's actually not the way that we want to reinforce good behaviors on campuses. We really want to make sure that we're reinforcing positive behaviors by celebrating the positive behaviors that are happening through saying things like positive narration. I can see that the student is ready to learn. They're looking eyes forward. They're raising their hand respectfully by narrating all the great stuff that's happening. But also sometimes school-wide positive behavior incentive systems are also super helpful as well. Whether that's a ticketing system, it could also be something like one of the examples I'll use from Rocklin is they have like a very cool lunch area that their kiddos get to sit at if they earn it. So a bunch of really neat things that are really helpful for students. But we also know that sometimes that can be an ask on our staff as well. So if you're doing things like a ticketing system, for example, Sometimes staff might have to cut out those tickets, keep them in their pocket, make sure they're doing it well, make sure they're doing it with fidelity, make sure that anytime they are positively narrating or passing out some of those student tickets, that it's meaningful. And if it doesn't happen that way, it can progress stalls. Or excuse me, it can progress will stall. So let's dig into those disconnects and the opportunities for learning as we move forward. All right. Another kind of disconnect that we saw with PBIS systems is it's really hard to keep track of all of that data, right? And it's really hard to keep track of all that data meaningfully. So a lot of PBIS data is stored in your student information system, or it's stored, in my experience, on my teacher clipboard, right? This is where I was keeping track of all of the great things that were happening in my classroom, and also how many times I was engaging in our PBIS system. So some of that data could be done through office discipline referrals, through your school climate surveys that you're sending out, and also through your behavior tracking systems. But they don't always tell us why something's happening. So that's why we really want to make sure that if there is a disconnect happening or progress is stalling, that we can really interview our students and our teachers to get to the root cause of where that progress is stalling, and try to make sure that we're taking action-oriented next steps through collecting open-ended feedback. So I'm going to pass it over to, I believe, Jillayne, are you kicking us off?
Yes, I will.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just a little bit more context about our school. So we, like I mentioned before, we're a really large campus of TK through 8th grade students. So not only is that a lot of students at the school, but it's a wide variety of ages. We have 4-year-olds and we have 14-year-olds at our school. When we were early implementers of PBIS, our school opened in 2014 with 820 kids on day one, and so 34 different classrooms. And it actually came from our PE teacher. Karen is our PE teacher now. That's why she knows all of the 1,200 kids at our school. But of those 34 classrooms, there were 21 different classroom management systems that were put in place across the school. So we quickly learned as a new school how important it is to have that consistency for the students and for the school, just across the board. As teachers are sharing students, they're collaborating together. We needed to have a common language and common expectations in all the spaces of our campus. The other thing that we know about PBIS and a lot of initiatives at school is you need to constantly be revisiting and reinvigorating those initiatives so that they don't feel stagnant and kind of lose their appeal for both students and for staff. So we'll talk a little bit more about the work that Karen and her leadership on the PBIS team has been doing with our teachers across the school over the course of last year planning and this year implementing new initiatives that were like running great in our elementary side of the building, but somehow was not catching any fire in our middle school. And then the other thing I wanted to point out that Gina's really been working closely with me and the students on is we've learned a lot the last couple of years around student voice and the students' ability to lead on campuses. And we've been working really hard to bring kids into the conversation. Often in schools, adults talk about the problems that kids are experiencing, and we forget that the kids' perspective is the most important perspective. So they can really bring a lot to the table when it comes to solving problems at our school. And so with that context, I think I'm going to kick it over to Karen next to walk through some of the work that we've been doing with our teachers.
Jillayne. So I want to talk a little bit about the steps we took to really dig deeper into understanding any disconnects, as Jillayne mentioned, between just our strong PBIS program that we're very proud of, our acknowledgement systems and data analysis, multi-tiered systems of supports. And we just want to make sure that our teachers are feeling heard and understood and where their challenges lie. So we chose Real Parsec to do some qualitative surveys just to get that deeper understanding to find out what's really going on, just to give them that confidence, as Jillayne mentioned, in how to positively impact behaviors in our middle school classrooms, increase that fidelity of implementation from day to day. The 4 questions that we focused on first was, what is their experience in PBIS? Because, with natural teacher turnover or student promotion, we're going to find a difference in that experience level. How do they think that PBIS strategies impact student behavior? What feedback they have about our current Gator ticket system and reward systems, and how they feel about their role in PBIS and character education at Gateway. We are really excited to get that very open-ended quantitative feedback that we can take a look at their responses and dig deeper into making that connection. You can see on the next slide that our overall sentiment for all 4 questions was 58%. So we had some opportunity there. But what really surprised us, you can see on the next slide that our 3rd question, which is specifically about our Gator ticket incentive program, what we're using to reward and acknowledge students and give them opportunity to use those tickets in various ways. Their opinion and understanding was 11% favorable, and really 67% mostly negative. And so just looking at those percentages is one thing, and we're able to see, okay, we have some surprises, some challenges here, but being able to look deeper into, okay, why are we 11% favorable? What were they thinking? So our next slide talks a little bit about what our middle school teachers felt and said about our incentive program feedback. And we found that they were not sure if our middle school students valued our Gator tickets and our Gator bucks. Maybe feeling like they were too old for that kind of thing. Maybe they were saying that maybe it got a little bit stale, having gone through our school from a young age into middle school, and just their confidence was a little bit low in that program. And so seeing their specific feelings and open-ended feedback really allowed us to take a look at, okay, what action steps can we take? And a big part of that, as Jillayne mentioned, and we'll hear Gina talk about, is taking that next step and hearing from our students, our student voice, what they're feeling about the Gator ticket incentive system. So I'll let Gina talk a little bit about what that looked like.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, so like Jillayne said, a lot of time as adults, we sit around the table and we have our opinions about what's going on at school. And at our school, we're working really hard to raise student voice. And so this was one of those moments where we could build a reel together with students, which we'll talk about in a second, and really see what they're thinking about this system. So overall, our student data was much more positive. They were favorable of our system, and we wanted to dig a little deeper to see if we had the same trends that the teachers were saying. So if we can go to the next slide. We can see the sentiment that the kids were saying. So it's funny because here when they said, what do you enjoy about our current system? And what would you change? The kids were so clear about they want more tickets. And again, in the teacher one, they just said that the kids think the tickets are stale. So it was one of those moments where we're like, whoa, we need to pause here for a second and connect ourselves back together again. And so I think, that was a moment where we could use just true student data and quotes. That's what I love about Parsec. It's not just the wheel of colors, right? There's quotes from students, so teachers can really say, oh, the kids are saying that this is important and they want these tickets. So if we can go to the next slide. These questions, by the way, we sat with not only myself, Karen, and Michele, but we brought a student on, and her name is Jada. She's part of our student impact committee. Again, like I said, we're really trying to raise student voice, and she sort of helped us create these questions. So questions that she thought and we thought that her peers could really dig down and see what's going well or what misses we have in our system. So what we wanted to get at was motivation, right? So like Jillayne said, the little kids were highly motivated around PBIS. And then when it got to middle school, it was sort of like this, okay, how do we motivate our middle schoolers? So you can see some common things in these quotes, right? Prizes, things of that nature. But this blue quote right here where it says, something engaging and fun and working with my peers, we really wanted to dig into that. And we found something really fun. So if you can go to the next slide. Kids were really just saying that what would motivate them was to spend time with their friends. And this is so great because that's free. right? So within our system, we were like, hey, we could build a really great incentive for the kids that costs $0 and really isn't a huge lift on the teacher's part and is already built into our day. So we have something called an extended learning time. And we decided, hey, we can use that time to really give the kids back this moment of hanging out with each other and just being social. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what we built out of this. If you can go to the next slide. So in elementary school, they had been doing challenges for a while, and they called it the Orange Ticket Challenge. We have white Gator tickets, so instead of white, they were orange to make them special. And we said, hey, we can do this in our middle school to really help turn around some of the issues that we're seeing. So our student impact committee said, hey, you know, kids aren't speaking with good purpose. We're not showing true kindness to each other, and we really want to work on that. So we said, okay, let's build this PBIS moment around this. And so what we did was we began giving tickets for specifically being kind and speaking with good purpose. And again, we saw that the teachers had some reservations about that. Like, I don't know how to genuinely give tickets. I don't think the kids like the tickets. So we did some training. Karen did some training with us about how do we give tickets intentionally. And then another thing that teachers were worried about in the survey was, what about those kids that are always doing the right thing that we just don't give tickets to? So we had the student leaders, they came and they actually tracked for us. So again, it wasn't work on the teacher's part. They tracked who was getting tickets weekly so that we could be really intentional about going to those kids who we know do the right thing and having that moment to connect with them and give them their ticket. So at the end of this, at the end of the 4 weeks, we all got together. We were out on the playground. It was called the Middle School Takeover, which they loved. And they got to be on the playground. Teachers were out there. Admin was out there. And it was just great because, I mean, there was a moment when I was sitting there chilling and 4 girls arm in arm came skipping up to me and they were like, Mrs. Thank you so much for this. And I was like, how simple is this that we did? That was so meaningful. And what was great about it is it came out of exactly what the kids wanted, super simple, zero funding, right? And we were able to really help the teachers see that, you know, where the kids' feelings were. And Karen's going to go a little bit more into what happened after the teacher saw this. So, Karen?
Yeah. So throughout the challenge, the middle school takeover challenge, I was able to meet with the middle school teachers once or twice, you know, during the process, and just talk to them about what their struggles were. And teachers were really able to verbalize again, you know, how do I hand out these tickets authentically? How do I find time in my classroom? And we got together for some professional development to give each other ideas, support one another, and you know, just really empower them to impact the behavior in their own way, the way that they teach in their class, but also be connected in our full school-wide incentive program to just feel connected with our elementary. And so they started to gain confidence and really look back at themselves to say, like, yes, I can do this. I can hand these out. And they learned through it. You know, sometimes maybe we were, you know, focusing a little too much and other times not enough. And so they really were able to work through that. In our third, well, also in our second PD session, we were able to share with the teachers the student sentiment and the student feelings. And that was an eye opener. And it really allowed us to say, like, yes, let's do that and give them that confidence. In our third session together as teachers, we were able to take the real Parsec survey again with the same 4 questions. The overall sentiment positivity jumped up to 80%, which was a huge increase. And you'll see on the next slide, that specific question we were focused on with our current Gator ticket incentive system moved from 11% favorable to 67% with 0 negative. So it was a huge jump for us. The comments specifically on the next slide show that they felt it was proven to be effective and that they were looking for more ways now to employ those processes in their classroom. They want to keep moving forward with this momentum. They were excited about it, and they liked just having that confidence and understanding. They loved the challenge. And so we were really able to increase teacher buy-in, which was our main focus, is being consistent, fidelity of implementation, and that teacher buy-in at our middle school levels to impact student behavior. And just by bringing in that student and teacher voice together, we were able to impact buy-in and implementation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. What I really appreciated about your use of Reel was it wasn't, you were using Reel to start something. You were using Reel as part of an initiative that was already going. So it was super, super purposeful. You're able to use the data really well so that it lent itself to taking better next steps. And that is the entire purpose of Reel, right? It's not a tool that's meant just to interview students or teachers or parents just for the sake of interviewing. It really is a tool that's meant to get high quality feedback so that you can take the next steps. And I love this quote here. I think we need to continue this momentum even when we're not doing a challenge. So you could see how big of a difference in mindset shift that was from, your first Real interviews where they were saying, kids don't even like this. We don't want to do it anymore, right? To, hey, look, let's keep doing this, right? Let's keep this going, even when there isn't a big event tied to the end of it. So it's really cool to see that. And also just your integration of student voice. I know in my classroom experience, when I was able to co-create norms and classroom rules and behavior expectations with my students, they were so much more bought into them than if I was just dictating it to them, right? And so when we are having our students tell us the behaviors that they want to see on campus, the behaviors that they want to be reinforced, they're so much more bought into being a part of that than if it's just something that's coming, from school leadership or from teachers. So the way that y'all did that, and I see something in the chat, so I just want to double check it. The way that you can make sure that you are using that qualitative feedback and putting it into action is by asking not only open-ended questions, but strategic open-ended questions, right? So we want to make sure that those open-ended questions are provoking a storytelling response. So questions that are going to ask your community members really deep questions to make sure that they are getting into the why behind the reason why they are behaving or feeling a certain way. I really love this as well, listening across roles. So understanding the different perspectives that may be affecting the results that you're seeing. What Real lends itself to really well is it lends itself to using AI to aggregate all of the themes and trends that you're seeing in the data, because we know that on the school leader or the teacher lens, you have a lot of stuff going on during your day. It's really hard. I've coded by hand before to pick out all of the responses, align them to themes, code those themes into trends, and then take action. So saving you some of that time as well, and then turning that around into priorities. So you're able to do that really well. And I think this was just an excellent example of that. So great work, Rocklin team. But the feedback cycle that we recommend for taking action is collect the feedback, look at some of that data, then look into it a little bit more deeply, then take action or follow up, and then check back in with your community, right? And that's exactly what you all did, which was excellent. All right, so we've been talking a lot, so we want to give time for those of you who joined our webinar today to ask questions. So you can ask questions of the Parsec team, of the Rocklin team. Just want to make sure that you all have some time for that as well. Please feel free to drop them into the chat or come off of mute.
Hi, I'm Tim Warner from Alder Grove Charter School in Eureka, California.
Hey, Tim.
We're K to 12, well, TK to 12, non-classroom based. I put in air quotes because we have classrooms. And those kids, we have a school dollar system with a store and everything. But does anyone have any experience with what you do with those students who don't come to campus? Like, we're kind of struggling to put together like some kind of virtual something, but it's like a lot more challenging than you would think.
For me, comes to mind, some programs like Class Dojo or things where you can kind of keep track of their acknowledgements digitally, and then, potentially have some choices or options for them for rewards.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Karen. I know that some of our teachers have used that on our campus, even when students are here.
And it's a fun tool for kids to use.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and oh, go ahead, Jillayne. I saw you
Sorry.
come off
Hi,
mute.
Tim. I just wanted to add into that what we heard our students say was, I mean, yeah, they enjoy the tickets, they like to earn those prizes, but also they are looking for that acknowledgement. So I think even just a way to acknowledge that what their efforts, their behavior, whatever you want to, to notice about them is being acknowledged by teachers. I think that's a huge part of it too, even without the prize attached, if you will.
Yeah, I
And
agree. So like positive phone calls home or positive notes sent home, like handwritten, often is more meaningful than some random ticket they can spend on a piece of candy. And our kids really did say that in our reel. So
We have
awesome.
found that they love the events, and we started doing PBIS popsicle parties, and it's been wildly successful.
Alrighty. Any other questions or comments or clarifications? And yeah, just like the Rocklin team was saying, definitely interview your kids, right? Ask them what they want to incentivize themselves. I think that is probably the most critical piece of information we can take away from here, right? Is just making sure that like our students are involved in all of these great systems that we're implementing on our campuses. That helps create the buy-in that we need. Oh, and then Adrian asks, how often do students cash out their tickets and how does that process go?
with our middle school, we have a store every Friday, and the students run the store. Parents donate things to the store, as well as there's like non-tangible things like earn a special seat at the lunch table, that kind of stuff. And so the students can use them weekly, basically, in middle school. It's a little bit different in elementary, I think, Karen.
Yeah, I can add that. So for our elementary program, which is quite a bit larger than our middle school, our teachers are doing some individual stores within their classroom and systems of reward from classroom to classroom. Then we also have weekly drawings for special events and rewards for our students who are earning tickets and recognition throughout each week.
And then finally, just wanted to plug our Parsec Summit, which will be happening February 2026. So please, please, please join us. You'll be able to hear from panels just like this, like the one you heard from today, of partners who are making really impactful change in our communities all throughout the state of California. And you'll be able to network with like educators. So Tim, if you want to network with some more charter school partners that aren't in a typical or traditional school model, you'll be able to network with them there. You'll be able to meet, of course, members of our team to help support you with products and hear from some really inspiring speakers. So please join us at our summit. And right now, early bird sale for our tickets, it's actually 50% off. So if you're a chronic shopper like me, that's a really good deal. So they're 50% off until May 31st. So thank you all so much. All right. I'll stay online. But everyone else, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for joining us. And we, of course, will also, this webinar was recorded, so we'll have the recording available for those of you who joined a little bit late or for anyone else on your teams who would like to watch this webinar. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.